Welcome everyone to the celebration of 25 years in the making since the beginning and my contributions, stable release and desktop maintenance of Rock Linux. Finally, probably over 50,000 hours of my time over 25 years, the most epic and full-featured release of T2 System Development Environment Linux ever. May I present to you 24.5 Future, no less nostalgia. Actually, we should have named it Epic for major milestone release, not only including the latest and greatest Linux kernel, GCC, Alien Clang, glibc, Musel, uslibc, Xorg, Mesa 3D, but also the Hool, and this week updated all of KDE and GNOME, and we even put an extra 80-hour week in for you to make sure that most of KDE 6 and GNOME 46 actually freaking works for a first in probably a decade for T2 Linux, because turns out 404 freaking dependencies for KDE and GNOME each were actually quite an excessive amount of work to keep working for your superior T2 desktop Linux necessities for gracious and successful IT, open source and Linux desktop, if not gaming, living, playing along at home on your DEC Alpha, SGI MIPS, Sun Ultra Spark, latest and greatest RISC-V, but obviously Intel Itanium IA64, fully epically restored and working desktop. All you see here, this is of course T2, the latest and greatest release, with not only usually we just rock here Wayland and Sway and Alacrity, but turns out this tiny little hobby project is actually good for all of it. KDE, GNOME, what do we have here? We even put in some and also paid out the first user bounties, right? Putting money where our advertising mouth is. The first user bounties collected, including for packaging and bringing up Ladybird, the very minimal browser from the Serenity OS project. So for your really tiny memory and resource footprint internet browsing, playing along at home, but otherwise, where do we have reached? Conqueror, I mean, this is like 40 hours here, 40 hours there, all of Qt, the fight that was Web Engine, Conqueror, Epiphany of WebKit GTK, of course our daily driver Mozilla Firefox in its latest version, but of course all of KDE, Dolphin, Kate, you name it, right? Kate, we have it all. No more excuses of why don't you use a full-featured freaking IDE. Here, Kmail for your latest and greatest desktop Linux email stuff. Nautilus, all of this KDE and GNOME stuff is here, and then some, including if you want to run your business like ourselves, of course, LibreOffice. I just need to focus here on Word, nothing like lost in remote desktop, working here for latest and greatest LibreOffice needs for your previously star, then open now LibreOffice, of course, in the history, in the 25-year history of Rock Linux that then later became for 20 years already T2. We had all of this, but it turns out, as seen here live on YouTube and Twitch and Discord, it takes a 40+ hour week and multiple persons to maintain, to just update, fix, patch, rename stuff to actually freaking work. As seen here recently on Twitch, because it's just so much random, why was it more silent on YouTube? I went full in, not half-bit, but fully embraced the renewed flame here for supporting the open source Linux desktop community. I pulled in full workday. We stopped basically writing our commercial software last weeks. We fixed KDE, we fixed GNOME, we even fixed LibreOffice installation marginalities of actually not installing stuff into bin. The list is endless. As you see here, a list of 36 pre-compiled base install ISOs, various glibcs, for 25 architectures for Alpha, Arc, ARM, 64-bit variants, AVR32, HPPA60 and 64i, 64 long arch, Motor 68K, Microblaze, MIPS and 64EL, NEOS 2, OpenRISC, PowerPC 64, LE, RISC-V, RISC-V 64, Spark and Ultra Spark, Super H, 486, heck, we even optimized and made sure that 686 works with more than 800-ish megabyte, as we discovered, probably due to a change due to latest accumulating Intel and AMD speculative execution memory mapping marginalities. And of course a higher performance 32-bit pointer x32 variant. Most architectures this release still boots with just a half gig of memory, and of course, as seen here, way less for the 256 megabyte release. Yes, that's right, the one and only, maybe last distribution to support not only the as seen here, the Sony PS3, SGI02, SGA Octane, but even Itanium. And you can, if you want, often usually boot the system even with as little as 128. And if you squeeze it a little bit and manually optimize the 64 megabyte, 486, no problem. T2 Superior Epic Linux has you covered. As you've seen, as a rolling release update using can be updated for those playing along at home on their PS3 and stuff using the scripted source build system, and thus even optimized way more than all the other Linux distributions out there, except maybe Gentoo 4, your native CPU at hand. This release contains a total of 5,140 change sets, half from me, half from Data, and a couple of other increasingly contributors playing along at home, and that is only relative to the last major release of last year. So it's like, yeah, and even more updates, because approximately 5,314 packages were updated. If you're wondering why these are less changed than updates, sometimes we group KDE and GNOME updates by the dozen. 564 issues fixed, 317 packages or features added, and 163 things removed. Around 53 major improvements, and more details you find in our new professionally compiled changelog here for GCC versions, user visible stuff, GNOME, KDE, switch to Pipewire by default, enable SetROM swap by default, like for your PS3 and stuff. We even went through some 40 hours a week of getting all our archived PCI and AGP cards out there and fixed half a dozen of bugs in its support libraries for actually, because broken upstream, obviously, most vintage and retro drivers actually work. We added so many improvements. This is of course just only the tip of the iceberg that we could compile like in one afternoon of going through the changes. Recently we added, as you've seen here, improvements to the installer, LVM RAID, non-x86 install architectures, build time estimates, better dependency resolution. We made initRD more usable by default, with including more USB drivers, Ethernet drivers, Ethernet physicals. Everything we found in testing this on Open, IBM, Open Power, Itanium, Apple G5 stuff, and so on. Better NFS root support for our, as you've seen here, built out just fully automated test infrastructure for actually testing that these ISOs work and not brick your Apple Power Mac. We even made x86 Linux work on first ever on AMD Geode LX and Transmitter Crusoe, the early VR3D C3s, and we even fixed the glibc not to infinite loop on IDT WinChip processors for all your vintage and retro stuff, because the Chinese CCP broke this for their x86 clone support. P3 frame buffer was reworked to save 8 megs of system memory and reduce system load by up to 6%, of not constantly reblitting the system frame buffer to local RSX VRAM. We even, as seen here, experimented with homebrew support, making T2 build packages on BSDs, Haiku and macOS. Actually relatively successful videos, which probably we should build out further. We switched the default shell to a much more modern MKSH and used it in the initRD2, a huge upgrade from the 20-year aging PDKSH we previously used on the initRD for specific feature reasons, and optimized the source build stuff for not defaulting to LTO and less smartly optimization for not wasting excessive CPU cycles for your local software builds on your vintage and retro hardware. Most KDE and GNOME was actually fixed to finally work again, and actually a huge memory leak was fixed in the decade-old memory leaks that even improves further free memory on PS3 and other vintage and retro systems. Over 200 new packages, most existing packages as you can imagine, in some 5,000 updates, which of course 5,000 updates include updating half of KDE and GNOME multiple times. Over 5,100 subversion revisions, which of half were contributed by our data AI. Developer visible changes, CAS dependencies now automatically marked as optional when queried by package installed. Rust C improved to more often bootstrap by itself and not downloading some pre-built binary from Rust.org. We switched to the libgl vendor neutral GL library, Xcrypt for glibc systems for vintage crypto. As seen here, 8 hours spent on making ICU4C actually cross-compilable cross engines. The usual things that should just work, and we spent 8 hours on here live on YouTube and Twitch. Rework Git checkouts to hopefully finally be stable, checksummable and reproducible, better Ninja support, and many more things that I didn't even have time or any patience left to summarize from 5,100 subversion revisions. Of course, as you see, that is truly remarkable and amazing for such a small team, keeping 25 CPU architectures, Itanium, and latest and greatest RISC-V, if not even the Chinese Lungson CPU stuff around, not to mention 686, 486, and all the other things, and old Xorg drivers to actually freaking work TM that other people always say are unmaintainable. Of course, after the release is before the next release, we have still 666 lines of to do, of which we will further work on live on YouTube and Twitch, and certainly drive our passion of supporting everything from ARM to RISC-V and all the vintage and retro goodness. We have PS3 RSX to do, and now with over 26,000 subscribers, live streaming the last 5 of the 25 years doing open source Linux, we can further have fun reverse engineering stuff. We have Power VR here to reverse engineer what I said for years, but hey, first I had to polish our Linux distribution, and as I said to our new core developers contributing regularly, now after putting 5 full-time years live streamed on YouTube and Twitch, now we mostly only don't need to break it again, because right now it is actually freaking working. As I mentioned previously, I took a decade, 10 years of only maintaining core, embedded and virtualization server things and neglected the KDE GNOME desktop because there was not the year of the Linux desktop. So a great time was spent, as seen my early live streams, 6 hours updating KDE 5 years ago, 7 hours updating GNOME, and then over the years again and again, rinse and repeat. And now the last week, 40 hours of just, as seen on Twitch, 8 hours live stream, 9, 10, I think one live stream was 10 freaking hours of packaging 50 new KDE dependencies and making sure and iterating, trial and erroring through the gazillions of 400 for freaking not making this up. KDE 6 as amazing dependencies as K, work hours and indoor maps and such amazing things. So you can imagine how long it took to get like Kate actually working, like 50 new dependencies just to compile Kate for contacts and indoor maps and opening hours and map visualization. Now it's there. All you need to do is actually set up an email account, and it surely, probably, hopefully will work. Maybe a tiny little patch required. Patch is welcome because there's only so much 50,000 hours I can put in over 25 years. The state of T2 desktop Linux was never as amazing since probably 2008. And again, as I said, all we need to do is not break it, just maintain it a little bit. We have an AI which we need to build up of delegating boring package updates of like 5,000 package updates of all of KDE, XFC, GNOME, made GNU step to our data AI and do the interesting stuff. And yeah, as you know, this stuff is free. We're not even charging like other Fortune 500 distributions. Support, donations, welcome. Otherwise, don't delay, download epic thread-ripping T2 Linux today for free there. A little bit dollar of donation of appreciation on Patreon or PayPal or YouTube subscription or Twitch subscription and all this modern stuff like that. Highly appreciated for all the work that went in there. I truly hope you enjoy that on any of your 25 supported CPU architectures and various build variants. As always, patches welcome, and let us know in the comments below what worked, what didn't. And obviously I'm aware that we need to do more PS3 RSX3D support, or like basically my to-do is endless, right? Like if you shellac subscribe enough, we have old PowerVR to implement open source. We have new PowerVR to reverse engineer. We have we could do SGIO2, obviously fully supported, but implement hardware acceleration for the SGIO2 rasterization engine backend there on this 20 years before Apple unified memory architecture system. And of course make more of KDE in GNOME just work, or package even more thing, because obviously 5,100 and some packages are not enough. Obviously you find some here, right? The increasingly most sophisticated list of open source build recipes. And I probably should put in more buzzwords. I mean, obviously we need more promotion and the most promotion, and highly appreciate your super chat for the cup of coffee there in some currencies of the world. And obviously we reworked the website already a tiny little bit. Obviously now after 25 years of coding, we probably need 25 years of marketing resources to actually make it as popular as some of the others, because T2 deserves it, of supporting like 4 times as many architectures as Debian officially or stuff. And buzzwords and stuff, yeah, buzzwords. This is a low-code, zero-code package recipes, right? If you look in this, all other distributions on the probably all, if not like nearly all or all, like just look at some packages and like how amazingly T2 zero, if not low-code. I mean, low-code to zero-code package recipes, meaning very, very little. Like this is all of Kate metadata. Yes, call it TOML, YAML, XML, whatnot. It is what it is. We invented it 25 years ago. Probably not worth to change our array key value syntax. Hey, XML was barely invented at that time, and TOML and YAML didn't exist, so YOLO. And that is like, look at that. Packaging, like just look at Alpine, Gentoo, Debian and whatnot. In my opinion, the most sophisticated packaging. Like if this is, have you seen buzzwords in advertising? If that is not low code, because hey, I mean, okay, it is theoretically one freaking code line, but it would, like many other packages, build the probably only Linux distribution metadata format that is low to zero code, meaning a developer usually doesn't need to write any code unless the package is so broad that it needs to be patched and quirked to actually compile or work. That is probably one of the most amazing things, plus of course the sophisticated cross-compile stuff. Why can we support with basically nearly alone, plus a handful of amazing, I mean not only my AI, but amazingly highly appreciates this core contributors, Notech, Dr. Schubert, and all the other anonymers and new contributors, Kuluk and stuff, right? More and more new contributors, just like it was back in the Rock Linux days, that highly help with catching my typos, continuing when I'm exhausted, when I or just fine-tuning stuff, working on alternative stuff like musolibc and all the other, and obviously more eyes help spotting bugs, small things, and packaging things that I don't need and would otherwise never have packaged, including feature bounties, right? If you're new to this, I'm not joking, we paid even the small feature bounty of packaging ladybirds, this alternative browser as shown, right? If you don't believe me, just go here. We paid in the meantime, I believe, 3 feature bounties of previously announced, right? So not only the best and most architectures, but probably the only Linux distribution that actually pays their contributors. And we don't even have a foundation that has some hundreds, thousands of funding. So yeah, feature bounties, right? Stuff that's too boring for me, that whatnot or other people can do. Some as high as 120 something, I believe 120, what is XL? You can just go here, labels, right? The 120 euro, just packaging some stuff. I mean, okay, just packaging larger stuff, but hey, we are a small Linux distribution, we are growing, and I always said this, the more people share, like, and subscribe, the more we give back to the community, and making this distribution even more epic, even faster. That's probably most of the summary. I mean, plus of course we fine-tuned here all kind of lots of diagnostics. We implemented, all right. It's probably one of the biggest things is that we have a test infrastructure now and a test suite as seen here live developed on YouTube. I don't even know how many other Linux distributions have that. Of course, they run make check on some packages. I'm not even sure if that is published anywhere. It's kind of stuff like maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't. But we have now a test suite. It's not yet big. As I mentioned, always beginning is always the hardest. So of course it took like probably 40 hours of just test suite scripting, although it only so far maybe 12 tests or whatnot. But hey, making sure that the cross-compiled various binaries work, and then even where supported, make sure that the ISOs work. We even test stuff like kexec, which, spoiler alert, kexec broken for most non-x86 architectures. So shall I subscribe? We next have some test suite failures to fix because upstream is broken, recurring theme, right? And yeah, probably next website polishing, documentation polishing, because we need to tell the world, right? You can also go around the internet and share, like, subscribe, right? If you are just a user. So many people say, I can't contribute because I can't code. Like, first of all, hey, our package format is super low, if not zero code. Like, for example, we even have feature bounties to pay for packaging the missing optional LibreOffice, like 1 feature bounty, optional packages of KDE, 1 feature bounty packaging. Like, basically you can, like, as a student, you can earn a living just implementing all the stuff I write out there as feature bounties. And some stuff is zero or low code, right? And like package 12 dependencies and get some payout of optional stuff that I didn't even know existed, like K opening hours. And so yeah, it's not like you can't code if LE loop, if like that's the code, like that's the metadata. That's not even code. Like, this is the stuff, get it from there, automatically build it, and it's there. What else do we have to say? I probably should check on the chat messages there in the next. Appreciate all the thanks in super chat. Yeah, marketing. Ironically, some Debian people commented years ago on some forum post of mine, shameless self-promotion. It's like, hey, we are the Linux distribution that is the least known because for 25 years we have exactly, okay, for the last 5 years live on YouTube, I've done shameless self-promotion. For 20 years we have not done shameless self-promotion. And then you write on some forum, not even Debian, but like Heise.de news sites or OS News or Slashdot or Phoronix, like shameless self-promotion, like dude, nobody knows this 25 years old, one of the original Linux distributions, like whatever. Now we do shameless self-promotion. I posted already on Reddit. Slashdot, of course, needs to be reviewed. OS news notified, we've already posted on DistroWatch. But yeah, that is what it takes, right? Like, why are we not more known? Because for 25 freaking years, that is also the wrong website, for 25 years we have not done shameless self-promotion, and now we obviously need to do, because the world needs to know that there is a Linux distribution still supporting DEC Alpha or Motorola 68K, although Motorola 68K has some test suite failures that we need to fix next. But nah, if upstream Linux kernels and GCC are generating bad code, then it is what it is, right? So another thing that you can do as a user, I mean, except share, like, subscribe, download, don't delete, try out T2 Linux today. Notify some new sites, right? Because there's only so many hours. Like, I literally spent already, I mean, not only live streaming 2 hours of doing release engineering stuff, and then did 2 hours of posting to Slashdot, OS News, DistroWatch, LinkedIn, Reddit, Twitter, Instagram. It's like, hey, don't delay. Find T2 Linux on my Instagram posts today. Like, how to get more popular. It's like post, social media, more, rinse, repeat. And at the end of the decade, we are hopefully one of the top 25 Linux distributions ASAP, because have you seen how amazing this works? Even on RISC-V, like, as seen on Level 1 Tech and Gamers Nexus or Linux Tech Tips of, as seen here, RDNA 2 already 2 years ago on RISC-V, reduced instruction set computing stuff. Anyway, I'm done. It works. Hello, and let the YouTube channel grow, and the more nice things to do, because most stuff is fixed, like to do better dependency resolution. I mean, yes, I'm aware after spending 80 hours on fixing KDE GNOME, it will probably not emerge without build error. There might be 1 or 2, or sorting and build priority and dependencies and stuff. But hey, it's 90% there, and or 98% there. So the last 2% might require a patch or two. That's, of course, as I mentioned in the beginning of this live stream, after the release is before the release. But first we go party now and enjoy our own champagne. Let's take a look. 130 freaking average viewers. That is truly amazing. Certainly thanks to the recently YouTube algorithm nicely clickbait promoted videos of watch kernel developer do kernel development, and 18-year-old develops Linux distribution, and 18 years later it actually freaking works on everything abandoned, deleted, and unmaintained elsewhere, including like Matrox, SIS, and all the other Xorg drivers. And on the PS3, did I mention PS3 afternoon of today? Yeah, certainly shows we recently, Twitch channel, right, 770-ish or so subscribers, 26,000 YouTube subscribers. Can't thank you enough for sharing, liking, subscribing. I get so many comments. I mean, not only what changed, now I get a daily LinkedIn request of what do we have now. I'm no kidding, 1,234 views, I believe, in 1 quarter is shown on LinkedIn or stuff. I'm no kidding. I now get one like, yeah, now I'm a YouTuber. Like, about my Linux distribution, nobody cares, but now I'm a content creator and influencer. So everyone wants to connect with me now on LinkedIn. That is also amazing. And I get probably once a day some comment somewhere, whether it's on LinkedIn, email, Discord, or freaking Instagram, that people learn his stuff. That is also amazing, because give someone a Linux distribution and they have a Linux distribution for a day, teach people to code, and hopefully we have better code, because have you seen the code of KDE and GNOME and some corners of the Linux kernel that we fix here daily, because there be dragons and bugs. So, one last look at this comments, and we have 0 frames. That is amazing. Nothing like talking to the audience with thousands of Vodafone's failed packets. Many congratulations, that is amazing, and super thanks, that is also amazing. Highly appreciate this once more, and all the many new Patreons. there on Patreon. Did I post Patreon? Probably not, right? So you find this at any time here on our T2 website at support, of course. Did I post this already? Probably not. I only have shown that. So, or maybe also should like copy this in some way, shape or form so it actually works like between stuff here. And yeah, if you give it a try, let us know what worked and what doesn't. I obviously, did I mention I run T2 Linux? Not only like for 25 years, but to live stream this from my Steam Deck. Linux distribution is so optimized and fixed. Not only does it run Altanium and 486 and the Transmeta Crusoe, but also the Steam Deck. Did I mention Altanium and PS3? But yeah, coming live to you from T2 freaking epic desktop Linux with OBS, Firefox, KDE and GNOME and some things packaged in between. No, I probably need to write to the German government that there is a German native Linux distribution that they could deploy in their e-government stuff. So see you later, I guess, after I take a quick look at the comments here. And people happy that they could tune in. I'm also happy to see you all. I hope you enjoyed this and learned something. Test Ladybird on Itanium. Obviously, fix some bugs. Yes, patches welcome, and also upstream. And probably let upstream know that it works on Itanium on T2 Linux Itanium. And yeah, something more than NetSurf, obviously. It's always for devs or for normal users. Of course, it's for everyone. It is for embedded Linux. It is for professional embedded Linux. But also server, cloud orchestration, and just your plain, highly optimized gaming desktop rig thing. Basically, it's for, hey, if my father can run it, so can you. And if not, then probably it's a skill issue, because my father did not study computer science. He is a retired electrician, so if they can install it, I guess most people should be able to install it. If not, join our Discord there in the support links below, and otherwise comment somewhere else. Or help each other and share, like, and subscribe. Vision 5. Yeah, so Vision 5 is a little bit near. I have that here, right? So the problem is I will make a dedicated video, so don't forget to subscribe here to this or the previously more YouTube channel, because this stuff is not upstream, right? And also you probably want to subscribe because I'm promised, I hope they keep this, because I was promised highly threaded latest RISC-V hardware, but now they each month like, we ship it next month, we have supply constraint and stuff, we ship it next month. So the usual RISC-V vaporware stuff continues, but otherwise I was promised highly threaded modern RISC-V stuff, so you probably want to share, like, and subscribe. Also, so I will have some shout outs, so we need to end this video for YouTube algorithm length promotion stuff. But yeah, Vision 5, I mean, of course it works. I will make a dedicated knowledge base node, which we now have for our increasingly professional system. Here, knowledge base things like Fresh Install 101 and other old RAID stuff, but we will work on a knowledge base number 9 of installing T2 on other board support package provided kernel systems, like the Vision 5, because we'll make a dedicated video. The frame buffer, even the frame buffer stuff, let alone the 3D stuff, is like 2 years or whatnot later, still not upstream. So that certainly hinders T2 installation quite a bit. But probably also next video, like trying to cherry pick RISC-V, frame buffer and 3D stuff. Which, did I mention reverse engineering more Power VR stuff? And theoretically in the long term, I have an NVIDIA NV1, right? Nothing like writing a 3D driver for the original very first NVIDIA NV1 and PS3 RSX and very first, or nearly first, Power VR PCX, like basically the second generation Power Imagination Tech PCX2. So lots of stuff to come. The point, of course, is first learning what NVIDIA and Power VR Imagination Technology were thinking, and once we have some driver for the first generation, use what we learned and write drivers for newer stuff, which is always a good YouTube content and way to learn. What are you doing here? Revolution, to say the least. Happy to hear that. Most news, and that's the thing, right? I had this already 20 years ago, right? 20 years there were, like, nowadays there are of course 2048 freaking different Linux distributions, most of which are just a fork from Red Hat or Debian, which in my opinion makes most of the 2048 Linux distributions rather pointless. But most news sites disagree and don't want to write news about this, right? I had this problem already 20 years ago when it was Rock Linux and we didn't have 2000 but only like 200 Linux distributions. But like nowadays, if you're not Apple, Facebook, Microsoft and Google and Debian or Red Hat, you don't get the freaking news, right? What more should I do than writing press releases? I wrote press releases at Rock Linux time, I wrote press releases now, and where we will be published, we will see. Like maybe, actually I can post the Slashdot link. I submitted, and that's also the thing, I submit stuff. The problem is it's a full-time business, right? Not only the last, no joking, the last 2 weeks I pulled here nearly 80 hours a week of T2 open source release engineering. Because people are like, why didn't you just release? Like, yeah, I mean, have you seen how live on Twitch, how long it takes to write here stuff, to rewrite it, to rearrange it, to compile it, to create new pages of listing all the stuff? It looks like next to nothing, but like 2 hours spent on this and so on. Plus, did I mention we made KDE in GNOME work? So some links. We are also live on Twitch now because we just do so much that it is too much for YouTube. And you might want to subscribe there too. That is that. And then I don't know if voting or whatnot influences this. I'm not that big into Slashdot. But let's post also the link for the Slashdot news, which is of course this one. If it's still there, I don't know. Submission here. And that's the thing, right? I write, then you finally send the email, and like each time you can always like, yeah, read your freaking email longer. Like each time every time I write, I test send it to myself, I find, okay, good enough, whatnot, like 1 hour later of bloody email release writing. And then I sent it, and then I know, and like I copy and paste the text to the next news site, and I notice typos and marginalities and wording and stuff, right? Even here, I posted this to Slashdot and like even then some wording, but in general, it's of course like I'm a tech guy, not a didn't study English and history and whatnot and marketing. But so that is why what makes also projects recurrently fail or succeed in having marketing people who do marketing. Because we just need to refine it. Maybe our press release stuff is not good enough, but yeah, you can maybe, I don't know if this is upvote worthy somewhere. We had at least one, if not two. We had the AMD, remember when we spent like way too many, also 100 hours on finding AMD Zen 4 instability bugs and uncovered an AMD errata for AMD Zen, my named Kofefe speculation marginality, AMD erratum 1485, which might still not be published upstream. They promised me they write it. I've not seen the official erratum text till the day. Like you Google stuff and only find yourself. But at least we were once on Slashdot here. It's like that is one of our biggest ever on Slashdot. Like it takes only like 25 years in the making and then finding an AMD CPU bug to get on Slashdot. So that's something. But otherwise, maybe we have been once more on Slashdot. I'm not sure. Maybe we were. Let's see if I can find this with that. But maybe I miss. Is it even T2 SDE or this doesn't even find anything for reasons? Does it find something with the T2? Here we actually were. Right. You send something 20 times to Slashdot. Each time they delete it. But if you then write, hey, we now have an AI that updates our packages, and like Slashdot, AI, yes, let's publish it. So, all right, that was, I did not misremember this. Yes, we have actually indeed been on Slashdot. So let's hope we can manage it this time too. Maybe if you upvote that, it helps. I have no idea. I'm not that deep into Slashdot. I only try to sometimes shamelessly self-promote there, our fine Linux remix. One last check there. So yeah, Vision 5 video coming, more work. It's also like, hey, that's amazing, but can I run it on my Vision 5 too? It's like, yeah, if upstream would have a frame buffer and 3D support, because it's like that's in 2024 something upstream and the company still can't get their act together because it would be too easy. So celebrate the 3rd super on a live stream. That is amazing. Let's celebrate the 20 super on a live stream. That is also amazing. Do you have a tutorial about building packages for Linux distribution in general? No, because it's differently for its Linux distribution, and it's like, do you have a tutorial about building packages? Like, I mean, what precisely do you mean with that? And thanks for the congrats. T2, so basically, what I mean, do you mean just write source code that works on Linux, or packaging stuff for Linux distribution? Because packaging stuff is entirely different between RPM, deb, and T2, and obviously the most low code and superior on T2 Linux. T2 will run on Ultraspark. Yes, of course. I even spent way too much time making. So T2 is also, of course, the only Linux distribution that boots on a Sunblade 1000 with 8 gigs of memory, because Linux upstream kernel panics very early in the memory initialization. I spent a whole freaking weekend easily, probably more than 16 hours. Maybe even, I easily spent 30 freaking hours just debugging Ultraspark. I already thought it's some hardware marginality or whatnot. I got it, I quirked it to work, and that's the crazy stuff, right? I can't even send it up. People have you sent it upstream? I mean, often upstream doesn't care because they just want to delete it, like 486 or stuff, or Itanium. The Spark stuff I would even send to good friend David S. Miller, but it's not a real fix. Like, I only got it workaround, like it works like that. It's super ugly, but I mean, if I send good code upstream, it's like, yeah, we rather want to delete that. So I don't send like totally ugly that cannot go upstream code in there, right? So after spending easily 30 hours on making T2 boot on a fully loaded 8 gig of memory Sun, which obviously we have here, previous live stream, right? For everyone new, we have thousands of previously live streamed and archived videos of stuff like IBM RISC System 6000, Itanium, and Ultraspark. So yeah, that is after the release. Is before the next release. Theoretically, we would need to debug. I would spend another 30 hours of fully debugging what the freaking heck is truly going on there with Linux memory management. I suspect there is some large, huge page marginality, incompatibility, or other corruption. We have a T2 as a workaround. Anyway, otherwise, of course, it works. We have a Sun T, like we have even the nearly fastest out of order. Like, obviously, we are the last to support Power stuff and Power 8, Little Endian, tested, including Firefox, Sun 4V, Sun T4 out of order, speculative, 64 thread. Nearly latest. There is newer, but that's too expensive. If you, by the way, have hardware, if Intel and AMD is watching, we currently cross-compile everything on a humble, epic, thread-ripping Ryzen 7950X. What is also crazy and Guinness World Record worthy, we can cross-compile and release all our 36 of 25 architecture variants with glibc, Musel, and userlibc in 2 hours each in epic thread-ripping parallel on an AMD 7FX in just a little over 24 hours to rebuild and cross-compile all the entire T2 base ISO world there, which is absolutely mind-blowing if you think that one high-end, finely tuned workstation can cross-compile all this stuff in just shy over 24 hours. Question there, a YouTube video how to use it. Theoretically, like every of my live streams, right? I mean, theoretically, yes, I actually have this on the to-do, and also we actually have that somewhere here, like probably in either quick install, yeah, here even linked. Quick install in 7 easy steps, including a 4K in 5 minutes T2 installation video, right? We probably could update this to installing GNOME or whatnot for even better results, but that is there. And what else do we have there? I probably next need to sell a handbook, obviously, right? Who wants to buy a printed handbook? And by the way, did you realize there is promotional stuff, right? Like if you want to matching. Do we have? How can I open that? Like maybe open. Can we click on open product page here? Probably just one browser tab away, right? We have matching merchandise. Just in case you want to use and code and style, right? T2, iLinux code, hacker, peak bugs, only constant change and regressions, and similar such amazing, colorful stuff. Also for your significant other and child. And then you have something nice to wear and show the world, which only probably need to click there and somewhere like there for your child, and hoodie and Linux code, and of course a premium hoodie, save, publish, so that I can actually see my comments again. Yeah, basically questions, best asked questions in the support community on Discord or YouTube comments. What else do we have here? Tell me about T2. What, did you develop your own OS? Yes, just like Debian and Deborah and Iron. We will also next do microkernel, right? Like now that we have a finally working T2 Linux again. T2 new ISO, what's the download ISO used? GNOME, you need to emerge this from source. As a added benefit, you have it highly optimized for your specific CPU. Questions, are you going to upgrade to the 9000 series Ryzen in a few months? AMD will support it. I hope so, because the only constant is change and more, the only substitute for CPU's IPC is more IPC, right? Certainly, use cases like this, like emerging all of KDE and GNOME, best with more IPC. So I hope ASAP, probably subscribe for some launch day coverage. Never built an OS, how can I get started as a beginner? There are some wikis, like read Andreas Tenbaum's Minix or osdev.org wiki, or just some other books of the Linux kernel. People comment there C, but also Rust or C++. Can one run Windows emulator in this? In this, of course, you can freaking game in it in Wine. I gamed in T2 Linux in as early as 2000 when it was, I don't know, Wine 0, 9 or 1 or whatnot, like Formula 1 Grand Prix, and nowadays, of course, nearly everything runs in Wine as seen on Steam's Steam Deck. Would fork someone else one day project and play around and feature, okay, people discuss there. You could also look into Haiku or Serenity. Plenty of YouTubers who made one. So if you want to see some latest and greatest development stuff, then also don't forget to subscribe, because next we have a microkernel to develop. Yeah, thanks for heads off for the dedication. I mean, it only took like 80 hours to fix most of KDE and GNOME, so, and 25 years to cross-compile everything else. And I mean, obviously some months of work of making P3 work again, of all the drivers. Like storage broken, frame buffer broken, we even optimized it and only have this 3D driver left to work. Can run on a Commodore 64 by using a cassette tape? No, not, but you could add support for 6.4 or whatever, 5. Cross-compile support in T2 for your C64 homebrew. Fun fact, I plan to make, I will probably add TI 56K. So once upon a time was a GCC fork for TI 56K DSPs. I will probably try to add support for this vintage TI DSPs 42. Actually, fun fact, we have support to compile AVR, like use a T2 cross-compile environment to compile to 8-bit AVR. which I've used here for the keyboard controller. Previous video for the Sun Type 6 and Apple ADB keyboard controller TNZ thing, I used actually T2 to create the GCC, to configure and compile the GCC cross-compiler for 8-bit AVR. So you can do for the Nintendo or other DSPs. Are you making money off T2 or kernel hacking, or only one's body needs? Are you making money off of T2 kernel hacking, or is i3 working? i3 is probably working. I've not tested this. I mean, obviously Sway is working. Hyperland is working. GNOME, XFCE, TWM and others. i3, we have a package. It's probably working. If not, patches welcome. Questions there are you making money off T2 or latest kernel hackings? I mean, we make money with open source, right? I founded my company in 2006-ish for open source. As I mentioned a couple of hundred times, earning money with open source freaking difficult, which is also why, I mean, not only most open source things are been done or otherwise not amazing, and we turned to Twitch and YouTube. I made some good money. I mean, obviously we did embedded projects, right? I said this before. I mean, we were in talk with Sony and Volkswagen and stuff. And even Bomesta, I even was there here. Bomesta, the high-end audiophile audio stuff that also supplies automotive in the meantime for Porsche and whatnot. And we nearly got into supplying embedded Linux, but the thing is, like, even this highest end audiophile, that probably was 2008-ish, so a whole freaking long time ago. I only mention this because most projects, like even Volkswagen and my most beloved story, Sony, we nearly got into Sony smartphones before the iPhone was even created, so like probably 2005, 2006. Like one of the very first things when I founded my company, we got in contact with Sony by pure chance. But the thing is, and I told the story a couple of times, we thought like, hey, we get embedded Linux stuff for Linux smartphones with Sony, and then those guys, like we had weeks of virtual meetings and stuff, and telephone conference and stuff, and then those guys, like two guys from Sony, middle management, whatnot, German-speaking guys from Germany or whatnot, still remember the names. So they visited us in our startup incubator thing here in Berlin. At the Technical University or TFH. And so then turns out, like, when those two, after weeks of wasted time and whatnot, showed up in private, and we thought like, hey, we get this moving and first big contract and stuff. Then they disclosed in person, in private, like when they met us the first time, by the way, we want to do this a bit different. We don't want to do this with Sony. Like, we want to do a startup, and like we want to do this startup with you. It's like, we have a startup, like we wanted to sell freaking to Sony, like what the freaking heck did we waste last week's time of presentation and telephone conference? I told the story probably the third time already, but that is basically how a lot of things go. And be a warning to most self-employed and aspiring, and especially open source. And then the other open source stuff, again, half of the projects we probably never won because pricing, right? There's always one student or other country overseas who does it cheaper. That's also totally amazing. The race to the price at the bottom. And which is also in general why we turned, actually, we're wondering why do we have this paperless office stuff? Because like this accidentally sold like hotcakes, and everyone was, I said this also, right? Like, on each freaking Linux are my scanner drivers for this boring document scanners. I wrote them as when I even was in school. So since 1998-ish or whatnot, every freaking Linux distribution, I mean, not only my changes and my contributions to everything from the Linux kernel, glibc, GCC, even LVM Clang, even I was the first to send a patch to Google's Chrome, V8 Chrome JavaScript engine. So yeah, on each freaking CD since 1998 is code from me, including the scanner drivers. And like, why do we do the scanner driver, mostly previous macOS scan and OCR and stuff? Because that pays easier and better than fighting for price to the bottom embedded Linux projects. Of course, we still did that for half of the business, but and also earned good in security and virtualization. We even earned money, ironically, with helping Silicon Valley companies that I don't know if they still exist or if I should disclose them, for virtualizing KVM. So actually, yeah, do we earn money with stuff? Yes, we did kernel code for firewalls, embedded things in cars and Silicon Valley companies virtualizing Mac OS in KVM QEMU. Linux, probably not more anymore because it's not Intel Mac anymore. I didn't follow up what precisely they did. Maybe they still exist, maybe they don't. But anyway, so yeah, that is kind of fun stuff. Like, you do one of the best Linux distributions and everyone only pays you for other stuff. That is why I 5 years ago turned to YouTube, because I thought this fun videos I can do myself and finally polish and develop my the best Linux distribution for myself again. And if it works for you, that's great. If not, then not, because it works for me and on all my hardware, except maybe my smartwatch. And I probably, I still have it to install it on an old iPhone. But that is probably what you want to share, like, subscribe for, because on my bucket list I have to port T2 on the Motorola 360, which I have in stock for actually these reasons. Does T2 run on a smartwatch? Yes, probably soon. I mean, probably already somewhere, maybe, but soon I will do it myself. So T2 on Motorola 360, and probably the first iPhone and iPad if I have the bucket list thing of, there were patches floating once on the internet, I hope I still find them, resurrecting the stuff and run T2 on at least old iPhone, as also this from Corellium Project Sandcastle of release source code of this virtualization security company. So that is also something. So stay tuned for T2 running. I mean, obviously previous video, it runs on Apple Silicon Macs, right? I mean, obviously it does, but also soon on at least some limited selection of iPads, iPhones and Motorola smartwatch. Plus, of course, all the other bucket list things that I have. I have not only 666 lines of, like, not joking. I rushed to final release because I have to do left of random stuff that's not important enough to file as issues, because issues we have also, but as all software, I want to release, like, how much effort was it? I wanted to freaking release it. Actually, my goal was releasing that last October, and it became April of the following year. Yeah, that much work it was, as seen here, basically full time. And yeah, the to-do list is sheer infinite. Somehow I keep adding stuff as fast as I delete stuff, because the only constant is change and upstreams regressions and new ideas and stuff. And even for YouTube, I have a list of 42 freaking major YouTube videos that I just didn't have really time for, including Linux on iPhone and iPad, Power VR, just to name the top of, did I mention a microkernel? And PS3, like, maybe we can finally, now that PS3 storage and is unbroken, RSX frame buffers optimized, and maybe we can finally do some 3D stuff out of the RSX, because reasons, bucket list, and because we can. And that is probably what you want to share, like, subscribe for, because there is so much more to come. And the more you should subscribe in Patreon, the more time I can put in there to do things like stuff. So that was to what do we have there? What do we have there? Been watching you since ages. That is amazing. Inspiration. Happy to hear. How do you start OS development? Reading books or wiki or source code? Do you get commissions for being maintainer? No, I'm only my own maintainer. That is my own unsuccessful little project. I only get commissions from my own company. So don't delay, try our stuff today. And if you maybe need paperless office stuff to scan, like Superior scan on Mac OS and do PDF and OCR and stuff. So Wait, what? You got OnlyFans? Yes, of course. You need to take money from any sources, like better than finding money on the cobblestones. How did you learn kernel programming? I told this. Basically, I grew up with VGA and Sound Blaster programming and demo scene on DOS. And that's how all started. Previous video, probably I need to make a dedicated one. This, as usual, when I answer questions, gets twice as long as it should. So don't forget to subscribe. Patreon, I think I linked probably most of it, except maybe once again Patreon. Let's see if Phoronix, like that's also stuff, right? Like every tiny little news gets on Phoronix, except, hey, we have a Linux distribution. Uninteresting, not Phoronix mercy. So maybe go write Phoronix. And don't delay, try T2 Linux on any of your epic architectures today. Hope to see you soon. Have a good day or night. I hope you enjoyed to learn something, and see you next time for all the 667 lines of to-do list and YouTube videos to come.